Jaylen Warren could be the key to unlocking Aaron Rodgers and the best version of him, not DK Metcalf. We'll explain that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda, Move and Be Moved. We are joined today by my friend and colleague at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, a columnist there, Paul Zeise. He's back. It's been a minute since I've had Paul Zeise on the show. Paul, when we talked a lot about this team going into the season, there was a lot of hype around it. It's the young offensive line. They're going to be able to run the ball. And right now, the Steelers have the 30th most attempts, so third to last in the league, the 30th most rushing yards, and the 30th yards per attempt average. That, to me, is a much bigger deal than I think that people are giving it credit, because Aaron Rodgers was not brought here to just create the number one passing offense and to light it up like he's prime Aaron Rodgers. This needs to be a balanced offense, and without the balance of a good rushing offense, it sets everything back when teams realize they don't have to fear the run on play action.
Well, I mean, of course, that's a big piece of the offense that they, had put together, was they were going to be able to protect Aaron Rodgers by running the football and not needing him to, be the MVP guy that throws it all over the field and carries the offense. And I think they thought they had the right combination of young offensive line that will get better as the season goes on, and a good combination of running backs. Really, to be honest, if they don't get better on their offensive line, and this is where I would caution people, 4 of the 5 guys on the offensive line are in their first or second year. And so when you've got young offensive linemen, you've got really essentially Troy Fautano, who's really his first action. You've got Broderick Jones, who essentially is a rookie again, playing on the other side. And Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick, they played last year, but again, they're still really young. Mm-hmm. There's going to be growing pains with the offensive line. There's going to be probably some period of they need to gel and they need to sort of, come together. Any offensive line coach I've ever talked to, and of course, in 30 years in media, I've talked to many of them. They all tell you that, the offensive line, it usually takes a few weeks really for them to start finding their stride. So, I don't think we need to bury the dead, so to speak, if that makes sense. But I think, it is important that they get better. It's important that they figure out what their, where their deficiencies were, because I agree with you. If Jaylen Warren and company aren't a real factor, I think this offense is going to be in big trouble. One of the things that we saw against Seattle is that Seattle was able to jam up a lot of their passing game and basically force them to run the football. And I just don't know that outside of DK Metcalf, they've got enough guys that are capable really of winning those kind of one-on-one matchups, or two-on-one in some cases. So to me, this is the key to there's 2 keys, Chris, to the season, and really both involve the run game. I've said this several times on the little podcast I do for the Post-Gazette and in print. If I don't care how the league has changed, I don't care that it's a passing league, I don't care all the other different things that we hear all the time. The reality is, if you can't win up front in the run game on both sides of the ball, it's hard to win. And you're not going to win consistently. So I agree. Jaylen Warren, to me, it's not just him. It's the entire run game operation has to get a lot better if this team is going to have a real chance to do some of the things that, we thought they were capable of.
Yesterday's episode, I had on Alan Saunders from Steelers Now, and he said, listen, I think the key is feeding Jaylen Warren more. He had only 14 carries in week 2. Granted, he only got 48 yards. That's a 3.4 yards per carry average. You want higher than that. But there is a confidence in Jaylen Warren. Listen to Mike Tomlin talking about him and how he performed during his Tuesday press conference.
I thought Jaylen came to play. I thought he won one-on-ones. He oftentimes made the first tackler miss. He had a good pad level and downhill finish in his play. I thought as a collective, we still lack a little cohesion at times that is slowing us down. A miscombination here, a misidentification there. There's not one particular person, and that's why I'm just talking more broadly about us just needing to continue to work and solidify all of those things so we don't leave quite as much meat on the bone.
So I think part of this is when you look at Jaylen Warren talking about making guys miss one-on-one, that's what he was kept to do. Najee Harris was a guy that he was going to plow through guys. He was going to protect the football. He was going to give you every opportunity to say, hey, we got a chance to still to kind of control the clock here, be the big physical guy. Jaylen Warren was kept because he has the speed, the ability to make guys miss in space, and the ability to kind of capitalize on that as a runner. And I think you saw it, funny enough, not on a running play, but on a passing play, on the 65-yard catch and run that he had, where it was a catch, so it doesn't go down as a rushing play, but it was basically Aaron Rodgers said he's about 5 yards in front of me, but he's got a chance to beat that guy one-on-one. He did, and then he kept making more guys miss after that. And to me, that's a big part of what it takes to be a player. And in fact, as a receiving player, when you look across the board as far as making guys miss, he has the third most missed tackles that he's forced in the NFL among players when catching the ball. He has 6 on the year. Only guys with more than that are Jacoby Myers and Devon A. Chain. That is something that you can use as a running team. And to your point, though, they do need this offensive line to coalesce. It takes time for that. I bring up all the time. Pouncey and DeCastro needed time to get it together. Jeff Hardings and Alan Faneca needed time to get it together. It takes time for these guys to gel, especially when they're all younger guys. And to me, that's the key here is the Steelers want to, but I think that they need this to happen sooner so that they don't have to be a top 10 rushing offense. Right. Just get in that middle ground.
Right. They need to get to a point where they run the ball efficiently whenever they need to run the ball or when they want to run the ball. And I think the thing about it is I keep going back to you've got 5 offensive linemen. 4 of them are in their first or second year. I mean, this is a brand new offensive line. They're all still learning, and it's going to take a little bit of time. What we saw from Jaylen Warren in that really long touch, he actually didn't score, but it was like a 70-yard play or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was basically a little swing pass or screen pass, and he made a bunch of guys miss. And I think the other thing is he showed he's probably faster than we give him credit for. So he's the kind of guy that I think can be a part of the solution. I haven't seen nearly as much from Kenneth Gainwell. Again, you're over there, all the time, and so maybe you can answer this. I don't know. Is he better in pass protection? Is that why he seems to get so many snaps? I would not play him nearly as much as they play him, unless there's some really big disparity. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Jaylen Warren, the reason that he played so much instead of Najee Harris was because Jaylen Warren was good in pass protection. So I'm just really confused by the way they're splitting carries or splitting even reps, because to me, I think you want to have your best 11 guys out there as much as you possibly can. And to me, Jaylen Warren is clearly one of your best 11 guys. So they've got to figure this out. And they've got to figure it out pretty quickly, because you don't want to go and lose a couple of games that you shouldn't lose, especially this first part of the season where you have a number of games that we all said, oh, well, they're going to get off to like a 5-1 start or something, You've got to figure it out, because I just don't know that there's a path for them to win if it's going to be, Aaron Rodgers dropping back 40 times a game.
Right. And again, it's forcing teams to honor multiple things. Like, that's the key to this Steelers offense being efficient is, like when the Seahawks played, when the Steelers called play action, the linebackers aren't biting. And I wrote about this for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Go and check it out at post-gazette.com with my latest film study up Wednesday morning. But you look at how it is, like the Jets, they flew up to the ball because they remembered last year the Steelers loved to run the ball. They ran the ball more times than most people in the league. And They said, we got to stuff the run. Week 2, the Seahawks are like, wait a second. They're just using the run to set up play action. We don't need to be afraid of that. Let's make them run the ball on us. So to your point, when you're saying run the ball when you want to run the ball when they have 2 deep safeties and there's 7 guys in the box, because when that happens, it's like, all right, mano y mano, we got this. And if we can get a one-on-one with Jaylen Warren in space, we trust him to win that. And to your point about your question about snaps, Jaylen Warren right now, 36 snaps out of the 62 the Steelers have had. Kenneth Gainwell with 26. I do think they can up that for Jaylen Warren. The only thing I think that they see as a potential possibility for Kenneth Gainwell is his ability to contribute in the passing game as well. But I think with that 65-yard catch and run, you see Jaylen Warren.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. To me, he's one of your best 11 players. From what I've seen from him, he's better than Kenneth Gainwell. So why not play the better player? I mean, 36 to 26, I don't know. It probably should be more like 42 to, 20 is what it probably should be more like. But I get it. You try and keep guys fresh and all that other stuff. But, boy, to me, especially a team that's struggling to run the ball, why not go with your best player until, your offensive line figures it out a little bit and you figure some things out where, your other guy can come in and be effective as well.
I hear you there. We're going to switch the topic to defense next, talking about their struggles and what Mike Tomlin said there. That's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Paul Zeise, stick with us. Be right back. But first, remind you, this show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. These are moments that move crowds, move culture, and keep the game moving forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward was Jaylen Warren's 134 yards from scrimmage in the Steelers game against the Seahawks. His best moment coming on a 65-yard catch and run where he broke several tackles and registered the Steelers' longest play in 2 weeks into the season. That's how Jaylen Warren kept the Steelers moving forward. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like that, there's more to every highlight. There's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. We're also brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screen, prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. I love zone deals too. They pick the section. Game Time picks the seats. You save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way to buy tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Paul Zeise of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's dive into some things that Mike Tomlin said about his defense, both in coverage and in the run defense. Here's Mike Tomlin for his Tuesday press conference.
I just thought in general we could have been tighter in coverage and more solid in terms of some of our communication. And oftentimes the tightness of coverage is oftentimes a reflection of understanding and fluid communication, and so we got to get better in some of those areas.
Like, how about in terms of stopping the run? Where do you feel like some of the biggest shortcomings have been in that area?
I thought that we did a better job in week 2, certainly, than we did in week 1. I thought it got away from us down the stretch as we wore down. I think they maybe had 50 yards or so in the last scoring drive, for example, and so we're just simply going to get back to work.
So, Paul, listening to Mike Tomlin talk there, he's talking about things they were better. Overall, they were better at stuffing the run in general because they were abhorrent in week 1. And they did have several run stuffs. They held Zach Charbonnet to less than a yard per carry. But then they allowed Kenneth Walker to run like 8 yards per carry. When I looked at the stats at the end of week 2, the Steelers have two things that are very uncharacteristic for Mike Tomlin's Steelers defense. A, they have been bad on third downs. Right now, they have allowed 46.4% third down conversions. That is the 23rd best in the NFL. Last year, they were second best. And two, they are giving up the most explosive plays. And of all the things you can say about Mike Tomlin's defenses when they have been at their best, or even just being a good defense, they don't give up the explosive plays. And this is supposed to be a good defense, maybe even a better defense than what they've had the last few years. And they've had a top 10 defense each of the last 3 seasons. To me, Paul, there's several different things. I still pinpoint it down to matchups that they should be winning that they aren't. When you look at the Steelers defense, whether it's the run game or the pass game, what's the biggest thing you're looking at right now as an issue?
Well, I mean, I think the run game, to me, again, everything for me comes back to the run game. Of course, it's kind of funny. I thought that the Seahawks were helping the Steelers when they were not running the ball with Kenneth Walker. I mean, it seemed pretty clear to me who was better between those two running backs. The run game, to me, if I'm watching it up close, and I watched it pretty close on Sunday. Sometimes it's about just guys not getting into their fit, and because they're not getting into their fit, there's cracks. I think there's some guys that have taken some bad angles. I also think there's some examples of guys that just got blown off the ball or just got beat, and they ended up leaving a gap. So I don't know that I completely disagree with Mike Tomlin when he says we just got to get back to work and continue to tighten some things up and get better in the run game, because and again, maybe when Derrick Harmon comes back, everything changes, and that's really why they drafted him, right? I mean, he's a guy that's supposed to be somebody that will, suck up a lot of space up front there and stuff some things. The other thing that is a little bit concerning to me, and again, 2 weeks in, I'm not going to overreact and give you all kinds of hot takes.
Right.
But the thing that might be a little concerning to me is I don't know that they're 2 inside linebackers. Either one of them is a guy that is really going to step up and smack somebody in the mouth and do what you need from that position. I mean, Landon Roberts was limited in a lot of what he could do, but you knew when he filled a hole, because generally it was going to be a collision that was an incredible collision that generally was going to stop a running back, but also was going to make that guy think next time he's running down the field, I'm going to run through this hole, but if that guy's coming back at me, it's not going to be nearly as easy or nearly as much fun. So, I feel like there's a couple things at work. The defensive line, there were a number of plays that I just feel like they were close, and they just sort of tighten some things up and get a little better, and get all on the same page. They'll be able to probably do some things that they haven't done the first 2 weeks to stop the run. But a big part of your run-stopping package is your inside linebackers. And those two guys, they just have to prove they can do it. And I don't know. I think both of them are really good players in space. They're really good players in coverage. But when it comes to stopping the run, at that position, you better be able to come downhill and get to the spot that you're supposed to be at and fill it up and then get a guy on the ground. And I haven't seen that from either of those two in the first 2 weeks.
No, I agree that Peyton Wilson missed bad when on the Kenneth Walker 19-yard touchdown run where he just had an angle, just played it badly. The biggest thing that I've seen get in the way of him, even at other times, is that he can't get off a block. Whenever he gets blocked, he's not shedding it. Now, it's tough to ask your inside linebackers to just shed lineman after lineman. I do all the time. Ray Lewis said the best thing that the Ravens did for him was when they got premier defensive tackles to keep him clean, and that's when he was at his best. But at the same time, you still need to be able to beat guys. And there was one play where the fullback from the Seahawks pancaked Peyton Wilson so hard he pancaked him into Patrick Queen, and that was a double pancake. It's just you can't have those type of moments. And if you're the Steelers linebacker, I do agree you got to be better there. And I think the overall point that you're hitting on that I agree with here, Paul, is that there are people that think the Steelers should be panicking right now. They should be scrambling, scrapping everything, throw it all out, try something else, and switch guys around, bench everybody. That is what when you do that, you invite. That panic that you invite isn't productive. It's not going to be the thing that gets you over the hump. You want to tighten things up because you do have a scheme. And again, we saw from week 1 to week 2, the run defense did get better. They did tighten up some things. They're still just giving up a play here and a play there. And oftentimes it's one guy losing it here, losing it there. Just man, if you just held this out, this wouldn't have been a problem. Like, for example, that 3rd and 19 run. If Peyton Wilson just runs Kenneth Walker down in space, even if he doesn't tackle him, if he just gets hands on him and slows him down, the rest of the defense gets there, and all of a sudden it's a stop. They force a long field goal. Maybe they miss it, and the Steelers have a 1-score game with Aaron Rodgers having the ball back. But those are the things that you got to be able to do. And we talked about this yesterday as well. When I look back at the game, the 3rd and 9 on the right, a little bit before the Peyton Wilson missed, Patrick Queen blitzed, had an open shot at Sam Darnold and completely missed. Those are the plays that this defense needs. That if they can get those things that are very reasonably expected to happen from these guys, they've done it while they weren't with the Steelers. They've done it while they're with the Steelers. Those are the things that can make this defense be able to win more situations. And if they do, I think that's what it might take. Sometimes it just takes a few successes to get the ball rolling, and then all of a sudden things start clicking on a unit that does have a lot of talent on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is, like, you didn't go through mini camp, OTAs, training camp, and basically, how many practices that is and how many times you're out on the field.
Right.
Putting in a system and then scrapping it 2 weeks in. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, as an aside, we've kind of seen that in college where 2 guys were just fired this week after 3 games. I mean, I don't know how that, which essentially you're scrapping what you did. I don't know how that's productive. I don't. I think that when you look at, what the Steelers are trying to do, I don't think they're that far away, provided they do make the tweaks and the little changes and they're able to clean up some of the stuff they need to clean up to get better at stopping the run. I mean, I'm sorry. We're on defense now. Yeah, stopping the run. You know what I mean? Like, I think that they just got to keep doing what they're doing. The only word of caution I have, honestly, is just I have to see Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen get better. They have to play better in that phase of the game. I think, they do some good things in space. They do some good things in coverage. But ultimately, your front seven, you've got to be you got to be able to stop the run. It can't be Jaylen Warren, or Jalen Ramsey coming up and smacking somebody is like the biggest hit you get in the running game. It can't be that. You know what I'm saying? It's got to be your front seven. So I think that's where, if I have a word of caution, that would be it. I have to see that happen. But I feel like the defensive line, they'll figure it out. I believe Cam Hayward will play better than he's played and be a bigger factor each week as he, really starts to get his legs underneath him. He'll be fine. When they get Derrick Harmon back, unless we have all completely missed on evaluating this guy, I think he's going to be a factor almost right away. So, that to me is not nearly as concerning as maybe a couple of things that we've seen in the passing game. But again, if you stop the run and you make teams one-dimensional and you can force them to throw when they really don't want to and have to, then all of a sudden it's completely different. The other thing that becomes completely different is if you can free your 2 outside linebackers to just go get the quarterback and not have to have a little bit of hesitation that, hey, they might be running the football here. Now that changes everything as well because, as those guys on the outside can be really difficult for other teams to try and block if they're pinning their ears back and just going.
Exactly. That's what you want to have more often for the Steelers. You mentioned the defensive line. We're going to talk about them specifically next, especially the young guys in the defensive line. That's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Paul Zeise, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, we'll remind you this show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with this can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building the same game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and get your chance at $300 in bonus bets only on FanDuel. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Paul Zeise, breaking things down. Paul, let's cut to Mike Tomlin here. You got asked about the younger players on this defensive line, and there's quite a few when we talk about it. Cam Hayward may be the old guy, but while the Steelers are waiting to see Derrick Harmon, Keeanu Benton's still in his third year. They've added Logan Lee and Yahya Black. Logan Lee in his second year, Yahya Black another first year. Let's listen to Mike Tomlin real quick.
I just think in general we continue to work. It's not only their youth, it's our collective youth in this season that is 2025. Injuries are a part of the game. Certainly you adapt and you move on, but it certainly probably comes with more challenges at the early portions of the year, and I think we kind of felt the effects of that. I certainly feel confident that we're going to, experience the benefit of that. We got some young people gaining some real in-game experiences, and we're being challenged as strategists to adapt and bring the game to them, and I think in the big scheme of things, all of those things are positive.
I think the thing is with this group is that they are learning right now, much like we're talking about the offensive line learning, these guys are learning as well. And that's another reason why you want to see Derrick Harmon hopefully sooner rather than later for the Steelers. But Paul, you were in, I think, your journalism prime, I'd say, when the Steelers were developing their 2000, their guys in the 2000s. I mean, they brought in Casey Hampton, Aaron Smith, Brett Kiesel, all young guys that developed on the team. Kimo von Oelhoffen came from the Bengals, but they drafted and developed guys that eventually became part of what might have been the best defensive line in football for several years. And that also took time. But I think that's what the Steelers are going for right now is they're trying to find their next key guys to be up front the way that the 2010s did. And again, you were there to cover this when they drafted and developed Cam Hayward, drafted and developed Stephon Tuitt, drafted and developed Javon Hargrave. They just couldn't afford Hargrave because they were paying Hayward and Tuitt. And they just, unfortunately, Tuitt's brother died and he ended up retiring from the NFL. But to me, there's a clear blueprint that they have in mind of trying to get back an aggressive, physical defensive line, and they're waiting and they're trying to get. These are the early days of these younger guys developing it.
Yeah, and I think that to Mike Tomlin's point, obviously Derrick Harmon, a rookie, was supposed to be a part of the offensive line. The defensive line. But the reality is, with Keeanu Benton and Cam Hayward, and, they brought in, what's his name, Ukulele or whatever his name is. He's a guy, Quale, who's got some experience. I mean, I think the key was, this is a year we're trying to win. So we've got guys along the defensive line with experience that are veterans, and we want to be able to mix these young guys in, give them some snaps and give them more time as they earn it. And bring them along slowly. But again, sometimes that isn't always, Isaiah Loudermilk got hurt too. I mean, sometimes that's not in the cards. And so now these guys are going to get baptized by fire. Sometimes that's good, Chris, because then you find out a guy's really much better than you think he is. Sometimes there's growing pains, and that's probably, I think, what's kind of interesting about this team. They clearly brought in guys on all levels of the defense. They brought in guys, and they've got guys that have experience, and they're older guys. So it's clear they're trying to win this year. But they got a lot of young guys sprinkled in there as well. And so it's almost like there are a number of people that believe, well, if it doesn't happen this year, it's it's over. But to me, they brought in those other guys, the Jalen Ramseys of the world, the Darius Slays of the world, because it's like, well, we got a season here to try and win games.
Yeah.
But we also recognize that we need to reload and we need to rebuild and we need to bring some of these young guys along so that over the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to have the opportunity to build something pretty spectacular, when Hayward retires, even when Watt retires, when these guys are gone, hopefully, they've replaced them. When you've got young talent, you'd like to, ideally in an ideal world, you'd like to bring them along at your pace. But guess what? It doesn't always happen that way because of injuries and because of the way things happen. It just doesn't always happen the way you want it to happen.
Right. And it takes time to build it, to build this kind of stuff. And, to your point about the development of these guys, and the balance of having guys that you are developing on a team. You know, I've said all along, there's a lot of people that say this Steelers team is win now. They're all in. They're all in. Listen, all in is when you're trading future first round picks and current. Like they got 12 picks coming up in this draft that they're projected to have. They got like 3 projected third round picks. And if they had traded some of those, then I would have been like, okay, yeah, they are all in. They're not waiting for next year. But they're trying to do the thing that the way the Steelers have always done it. They try to win win with who they have, and try to get the best roster they can without mortgaging the future, because they want to develop the future. They recognize that, like, right now, the best players on this team are still, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward. They've added Jalen Ramsey. Those types of guys, they're not going to be around much longer. They'll be around for maybe another year or two. Cam Hayward probably has another year or two. Watt probably has another 3-4. Jalen Ramsey, you're hoping, has another 3-4 years in him. But, like, you're not expecting them to carry the team by the time you get to those second and third years. You're expecting Broderick Jones, Zach Frazier, Troy Fautanu to raise up the offensive line and say, look, we are one of the best units in the NFL. You're expecting Derrick Harmon, and then you're hoping Yahya Black and Logan Lee or someone else fills in and says, hey, we're the next generation of the defensive front. And then, as you were pointing out in our first segment, where the thing is, the best teams still win the trenches. And if it turns out that these couple of draft classes that they've assembled in the early years of Omar Khan turn into their next era of dominance in the trenches, it can set up so much more success everywhere else.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. If you can win up front, you can do a whole lot of things. And if you look at it, there's a plan in place. I mean, because up front on offense is young, yep. And up front on defense, they've still got a couple of guys that are obviously veterans, but I don't know, you close your eyes and 2 years, 3 years from now, you could see if this plan comes to fruition, they're going to be a really difficult team to build, to deal with, especially if they can figure out the quarterback position.
Exactly. We'll do a lot more here throughout the week. We got Crossover Thursday coming here tomorrow, where I talk to our Locked On Patriots host and get you ready for the game. Paul, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yep. Again, hopefully we can do it again soon, Chris. That's the biggest thing. I mean, I enjoy talking to you, especially talking football, right? It's always good.
Absolutely. It's always great. Read him at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Check out his podcast with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He does, I think, is it 5 p.m.?
5 o'clock. Yeah, 5 o'clock every night I do it, yes.
5 p.m. live stream. You can always catch Paul and ask him questions. He'll be working with you. Thanks so much, Paul, for joining us here. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get social medias. At Carter Critiques is where you can find me. Read my work like you read Paul's work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. I have a film study up on the Steelers offense. Read that there. We'll catch you here tomorrow for Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network.